What's happening, folks? Back with another reaction, back with some more acid-trance from the 90s, and indeed, we're back with a remix of Souls of the Tribes by DJ Paola, which I understand now to have actually been a Chalky production. Have you made up your mind, Luca? She has. And yeah, we're going to listen to the very first VCR, or Voltage Controlled Remixes record, which, as I think I mentioned in the previous reaction, was the remix label for parent label Voltage Controlled Frequencies, which, fair to say, has been revived in the last few years. They tried reviving it in the early 2010s, and I remember commenting, once it became clear that a bunch of tunes that had been produced and recorded and were going to be used for the revived VCF were then kind of shelved, and for whatever reason, I don't think it happened. And I remember commenting like, the reboot was apparently aborted, that's unfortunate, but the original run of VCF was amazing. And again, I had no idea, but a couple years ago, Chalky commented and he was like, it's come back now. And that was in 2023 when it was in its emergence or re-emergence, and now I think they've put out at least a few releases. And yeah, I am very happy to know that it has continued and, brought back one of the legendary labels of the 90s, although I think for the most part now it's doing acid techno, which again, acid trance, acid techno in the 90s, there was a fuzzy border between the two, a lot of tracks that incorporated elements of both. But either way, I'm happy VCF is back, and it was cool to see that Chalky had actually replied. In any case, we're going to listen to a remix of Souls of the Tribes, though fair to say, on the remix vinyl, it's shown as Souls of the Tribe, singular, whereas on the original version, it was Souls of the Tribes, plural. In any case, we're going to listen to not the John the Dentist remix. John the Dentist, John Vaughn, a lot of great tunes from the late 90s, early 2000s, because he mixed a style of like hard/acid trance with hard house. He was very much an artist that had my ear because I was into acid trance and hard trance and also hard house, and as I mentioned before, a lot of my sets from the late 90s were kind of a combination of those different styles, including the mixtape that I had, like I recorded on a DAT and then had it like professionally mastered and so on. And that tape, again, it's a mix of acid trance, and hard house. But yes, John the Dentist had a really cool style. His remix of Souls of the Tribes/Tribe, it's cool, I like it, but it's not the reason I bought the record. The reason I bought the record is for the mix on the other side, the brain-boxed mix. And I don't know who produced this. It doesn't say on the record. On the Discogs page, it doesn't give any indication. Maybe Brainboxed was the name of a remix artist or a group, or maybe it was just a stylized name given to a remix done by Chalky or Paola. But yes, either way, it is a very cool remix. It's again a very melodic acid trance tune, and it features a long, down-tempo breakbeat section with a really cool acid riff, and we get that indigenous tribal vocal still, though it's not quite as prominent in this version. But yeah, it changes the atmosphere a bit. It's a bit less epic and uplifting and a bit more otherworldly, but it's not like a trippy acid techno tune, but it changes the dimension that we're in. So yeah, I'll let the tune speak for itself rather than trying to continually characterize it in words. This is the Brain-boxed mix, boxed like B-O-X-E-D, of DJ Paola/Chalky's Souls of the Tribes, or Tribe as it's shown here. And it's from 1998, 1 year after the original came out, though as I said, I don't know the specific remix artist here. I love it. Again, maybe a track that lends itself more to mixing out. It doesn't have quite the artistic ending. How perfect. You're going to take off now? Hello. Or goodbye, as the case may be. But yes, it still, I think, could be used as a set ender, though maybe even better as a track that you mix out of into another one. But like with the original, you can stagger that mix. You can have a long double drop outro, and I think the edgy acid, and indeed the acid in this one, it's different than the acid in the original. It's less, intensive and flourishing, but it's a bit edgier. It's like a bit sharper, and it has a bit of a funky quality. And indeed, that keyboard riff too, which isn't in the original, it has a funky sound to it. So a funky sonic character. So yeah, it's a bit more otherworldly, a bit less epic, but a bit more otherworldly and a bit funkier than the original. Now, in the grand scheme of things, I still prefer the original. I think the original is just timeless. It's perfect. I wouldn't change a thing. But this one is really, really good. And even if I'd use it in a slightly different style of acid trance set, I think it is very much a worthy remix of the original. I especially like that long, it's like, 2 minutes or something, that long breakbeat section in the middle where the acid just, it riffs, it like goes higher, 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 then sort of tiptoes even a little higher, then swizzles all the way back down and begins the climbing process again, and then when it gets to the very end of that breakbeat section and there's a big build, it just keeps riffing its way higher. It doesn't do that tiptoe effect. And then, yes, I enjoy when it, breaks and comes back in for the final, or for the, main drop section. And yes, I think it's really cool, and it is perhaps far less common, meaning the original, I remember some people using it on their mixtapes. Not only did I put it in, some, home recorded mixtapes I did back in the day, it wasn't on my professionally produced one. But I remember there's these two DJs who are prominent up in San Francisco, north of where I live, Mars and Mystery, and they mixed a style of trance that they called cyber trance. That was basically acid trance / hard trance, maybe especially tracks with a bit of a futuristic or electrified sound. But nevertheless, on one of their mixtapes, I think it was Mystery's mixtape, I forget, it was one that had like an Imperial Walker from Star Wars on the cover. I think it was the Mystery Machine. I think he used the original version of the track. So yeah, the original version I remember hearing in other people's sets, including, as I said, when I first heard it at a party out in the desert. I don't ever remember anyone using this remix in, a DJ set that I heard. But yeah, I think it is a very worthy remix. Let me know what you think of this one. Let me know which version you like better. Once again, shout out to Chalky and to Paola, to the extent that he may have had anything to do with the tune, directly. Shout out to VCF and to VCR. Let me know, and I will see you next time. Peace.